But now I can't hear you. Oh wait, now I can hear myself, and there's an echo, probably because it's uh-oh. I can hear myself on the live stream.
Flight 209, you are cleared for takeoff. Roger.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
No, don't tell me.
Okay, now we're making some progress here. They can hear us. I can hear us.
I can hear us.
Okay.
What was wrong with this one?
I don't know. I don't know why it wasn't working, but it wasn't working. Do I have to plug that one back in?
Yeah, you do. It's a lot better.
This one sounds better.
Well, now you've turned it on, it does.
Shut up. I'm not plugging in that stupid thing.
All right. Okay.
Get it out of my way.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm not hearing you, Steph. Are the people in the chat room hearing Steph? Here, let me go like this. Off, on. Say something to me, Steph.
Just dropped out.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. No Steph audio. Okay. Nick's worked better. What do you mean? Actually, the sound is better with Nick's microphone? Is that what you all are saying? At least, is that what Mariana is saying? Okay, we can try Nick's again. Bring the damn thing over.
Oh wait!
Did-
Yay! Oh, I heard you for like half a second.
Yeah, well, we're still here. Are we hearing you?
Oh yeah, now I can hear you.
Ah,
Why
okay.
can't we hear you?
We can. I can.
I know, but we couldn't hear her before.
I couldn't hear you at all before.
I
have
don't know.
no idea. It was like I don't know.
we could have a little discussion about why we couldn't before, but we are now.
Okay. All right, here. There's a little switch on here that says off and on.
You had it turned off.
Just a little bit.
But his mic's not working.
Not a lot. Just a little bit off. I mean,
Just
it
a
was
little
nearly on.
Well, for some reason, when your audio was off, it like cut out my audio too, and then I couldn't get it back without restarting and
Interesting.
like resetting everything.
I love this. This is so great.
This has been a fun experiment in podcasting this morning.
It has. It has.
Yeah, if you're watching this for the first time, this is the very first time we've ever done this.
Yeah.
Or at least it appears that way.
And thank you for that suggestion. Anne won't take it back. It's been used.
No, I don't think it's his. It's this virtual mixer thing that I'm trying to do so that I don't have to haul so much crap with me. But that's going to change.
But Jeff, you're a professional crap hauler.
Yeah, that's true. Is there any way to get the how is the volume on this?
Sounds okay to me.
Okay. Just doesn't sound as loud as Nick's mic. But that'll have to
Peter Pan, Peter Picker, Papa.
And there's no static anymore.
Yes. Well, at least we have that going for us.
Hey.
Okay.
Where were we?
I don't know. Let's just start over. No.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
We're just gonna have to do another episode on like Monday, because this episode is gonna be like half an hour long by the time you edit out all
It's
the
going to be a
nonsense.
treat for the normal APG crew or ABG community. They're going to go, oh, look, a nice short show. Okay, I think we should move on to some feedback that I tried to play on my last Feedback Extra episode just 2 days ago, and the volume was too low. So I tried to do something to improve the volume level from Martin Holmes in where is he from? Durham or Devon, something like that. Oh well,
I can't see it written.
It doesn't say in this one.
Okay.
He said in a previous piece of feedback. So here we go.
Hello, Captain Jeff, Dr. Steph, the old pilot, Miami Rick, and the rest of the self-inflicted APG syndrome patients in the hospital ward. It's Martin here, based in Durham in the UK, and I just want to recommend a fantastic YouTube channel by Agent JZ, or for you Americans, Agent JZ, which is all things jet engine. Being candid here, I probably don't really understand much of it, if any, but it goes into wonderful technical detail. And despite this, I just enjoy seeing the inner workings of these beautifully engineered beasts. Anyway, it got me wondering, how much detail do you guys go into as pilots about the engineering of the engines? It seems to be a whole other profession and study. Or do they keep it simple for the pilots, as you need to concentrate on pressing the D-pad on the Xbox controller to get from A to B? Anyway, I've been pretty facetious now, so it's probably time for me to leave and get on with my recovery. Best wishes to you all, Martin.
Thank you, Martin. And what?
It depends
what
on the
say?
pilot that you talk to. So the one here
Yeah.
that could probably go into the great technical detail you're wondering about is not here.
It's quite right, but do you really want to go into all the technical detail? There are a bunch of fans whirring around, and someone sticks a blowtorch in between them, and they go buzz. So works for me.
You know, it's the philosophy is, at least at the airline that I fly for, has changed over the last couple of decades. When I was first hired, I was trained on the 727, and we went into excruciating detail, and not only the JT8D engines, but every single nut and bolt and temperature sensor and everything else. Is, you know, we joke that you could basically go out, take apart a 727, and then put it all back together. And it was really, you know, like some of the things that they teach us about, like at what temperature Celsius does the so-and-so valve close to protect the don't, and there's no way even to read the temperature. So what purpose was there for knowing the exact 212 degree Celsius number or whatever it was? And so now I think everything is kind of, the pendulum has swung in a completely opposite direction now, and where they don't hardly, at least at my airline, teach us anything about the systems. And it's like, well, if this happens, just pull out that QRH, quick reference handbook, and then just follow the steps. But actually now that pendulum is kind of swinging back to the center, as so many times this happens in various things in life, where you go from one extreme to the other, and then finally something sensible occurs, and you kind of go a little bit more depth into the system so that you have a working knowledge of what is happening with your airplane, but not in excruciating detail. So we can't go out there and, you know, get an engine, take it apart, put it back together again. It's most important for us to know what the performance of an engine is, and, you know, the critical things about operating it, and if something goes wrong.
Yeah, I remember one of my previous fleet managers who was a trainer. He sat us down. We were going in for a sim together, and he said, "Okay, guys, what's the maximum EGT you would accept when you have MCT thrust selected, max continuous thrust selected?" And we all kind of did this. We frowned a bit. And he said, "Do you really need to know that? Where's the gauge on the cockpit?" So, because when you've got an electronic instrumentation and there's a little red marker there indicating the maximum temperatures, you just go where the little red marker is. And he said, "Guys, I really don't need you to know this. I need you to think big picture. I don't need you to think little picture. Your job is much more strategic than knowing every limit and every number related to the aircraft. So when the aircraft tells you the information, you don't have to remember it. In fact, in some cases, I'd rather you didn't, in case your memory was wrong and you guessed at the wrong number and led yourself down the garden path, gave yourself a problem. When the airplane tells you something, believe it. And that's the way we will run this. And I want you to spend your time learning more about the areas that you can affect the way you operate, not those that you can't.
Well, it sounds to me like the practical thing is that you need to know enough to know how to address and remedy problems should they arise, but you don't need to be bogged down in all the detail of things that don't matter in those situations. But
yeah, I would agree with that, Steph.
But I'm sure there's always something that could come up and say, well, if you only knew that little bit of detail, that might have been useful. But again, that gets to how much is too much, and where's that line between knowing enough for all the common things that could happen, common problems, and knowing minutia for the things that are very unlikely to happen. It's kind of a risk benefit type of thing.
Yeah, when you've got a steam-driven airplane like Jeff flies or Miami Rick, you can actually move a lot of these little valves and affect things. But in an aircraft where there is relatively little to do, you've only got 2 buttons on the Airbus. So long as you know which one to push at the appropriate time, so you push the takeoff button before takeoff and you push the landing button before landing, then really that's the limit of the knowledge you need.
Of course, he's being facetious. There's at least 1 or 2 more buttons.
Well, I'm just matching the facetiousness of our previous feedback.
Yeah, so I think that the answer is, they don't give us so much information about these things that we could, really have a high-level discussion with an engineer. But we know enough about how an engine works, and we can, diagnose whatever the problem is in a practical way. And I think it is important for us to have a base level of knowledge of all the systems of an aircraft, so that if you get into one of the situations that's not covered in your quick reference handbook, that you have some working knowledge of, how to get yourself through the situation.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly fault analysis, it's very important to have a good handle on how an engine works. So you need to be able to tell whether an aircraft's engine has flamed out or is stalling or surging, and what parameters it's reached. And I am being entirely facetious when I say that we don't know the numbers and the facts about how our engines run. It's just day-to-day operations. We don't necessarily pull those numbers out of our memory. We have them there on the screens available to us, but you can bet your bottom dollar if we needed to diagnose something that was not in the books, I think most of us, particularly those with a bit of experience, would be able to make a good fist of that.
Absolutely, whatever that means. All right, more audio feedback, this time from our friend in Africa, Ahmad.
Hello, APG community. This is Ahmad Danhamidou from Abuja, Nigeria. I'm no longer in Lagos. I got a transfer from the broadcasting house to the headquarters of Voice of Nigeria, where I work. My question is for Captain Jeff and Miami Rick, since you guys both fly different kinds of jets, and it's about VR speeds. If you choose a short takeoff flap setting, such as flaps 10 or 15, will your VR, that's rotate speed, come earlier than your V1 speed? That's safety takeoff decision speed, something like that. And I'm asking this because bearing in mind that the FMC is aware of how long the active runway is, since it's in this database. So normally you have your V1 speed come up, and then you have your V rotate speed, and then you rotate, you're off the ground, and you look forward to the V2 speed. So if you choose a short takeoff flap setting, such as 10 or 15, depending on your airplane, will your V rotate speed come up before your V1 speed? And that's my question. Oh, I got a second question. Just remember that. This question is for everyone. After takeoffs, does the speed brake lever have to be moved forward from the armed position to the unarmed or stood position? or can it be left in the arm position throughout the flight, up to final approach when it will be required again? That's all for now. Kavu to you all.
Thank you, Ahmad, for the questions. Always good to hear from you. We were discussing your feedback while we were playing it. Nick, at least Nick and I were, because we're sitting next to each other, and we thought this is really the kind of question that Miami Rick would be really happy to answer. But we can tell you that the reason why you'd never have a VR, which is the speed for rotation, before V1 is because V1 is that decision speed where you can either continue a takeoff with one engine out or stop in the remaining distance of the runway, and it just wouldn't make sense to be rotating before that point, because once you start that rotation, you're now flying. You're in the takeoff mode. Unless something catastrophic is happening with your airplane, you're not going to put it back down on the ground and try to stop. So the whole point of we've talked about the fact that I've flown airplanes where the V1 and VR speed is like within a knot or two, or maybe even the same speed.
Yeah, exactly the same. Quite often when we are lightweight and using a considerable amount of power, they will be coincident. Yeah.
So I think the quick and dirty answer is VR can never be less than your V1 speed. But it may indeed be coincident with V1 and VR. I'll let Rick expand on that more when he rejoins us. But we can talk about the speed brake lever position during climb outs. Now, on my airplane, at my airline, what we do is we leave the speed brakes, the spoiler system, auto spoiler system armed until we clean up the airplane, the gear is up, the flaps are retracted, and the after takeoff checklist is called for. And then it remains in the unarmed position for the remainder of the flight until we have extended the gear and gotten our final flap setting, and then the auto spoiler system is rearmed prior to landing. But Nick, you were saying something about the fact that you used to do it that way, but now you do something different.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, first of all, how you physically arm the spoilers on your jet, Jeff.
We actually pull up, we have the spoiler handle, and we pull it up, and that arms the system and allows the gate to be cleared so that if the spoilers come out, there's unrestricted movement from that. Because if we left it in the down position, it's in a detent, and it can't be automatically deployed. You have to actually lift it up and then pull it back.
So do you physically deploy the spoilers yourself in a rejection?
No, we have an auto spoiler for rejected takeoff. So before we apply takeoff power, that's part of the takeoff warning system. It checks to see if the auto spoiler system is armed, and it also checks to make sure that the auto brake system is armed as well for the takeoff mode. So, and then there are times when the auto brakes are not working, and we can't use them for a rejected takeoff. So we are not allowed to use our auto spoiler system for that takeoff as well, because they kind of work in unison. And that's not unusual for us to have one of those systems not working, so they're both disarmed. I talked about an instance once a few years back where we were rolling down the runway because we had a situation where the auto spoiler system was not working. It was written up. And so we did our taxi check and everything else, and we didn't have anything armed as far as the auto spoilers and auto brakes. And as we were rolling down the runway, the first officer was kind of looking around, making sure everything was where it was supposed to be. And he saw that the auto brake system was not armed. And he goes, "Oh, I must have forgotten to arm it." And then he pops it into the arm position. And then immediately the logic goes, "Wait a minute, auto brakes are armed, but the auto spoiler system isn't armed. So that's a violation of the laws." And so now I'm going to start saying speed brakes. No, what did it say? Like spoilers, auto spoilers, whatever it says. And we're like at 100 knots rolling down the runway when all of a sudden this system's blaring at
Yelling
me.
at you.
Well, yeah. And I thought, well, that's okay. We don't need auto spoilers right now anyway. If we stop the takeoff at any point, I can just manually, deploy the spoilers, which is what we do
anyway, even on a regular landing, if the auto spoilers don't come out, then you automatically, grab the handle and deploy them yourself, because that is a critical thing.
Yeah. Oh, I hope you poked him in the eye with a nav roll after that. In the Airbus size that I fly, the auto air brake system, the speed brakes, in their normal down position is where we use them to deploy them in flight. And we lift the lever up, just like you do, to arm them on the ground. But you can't do anything else. You just pull the lever up. That's it. They're armed. And during a rejection, they automatically come out. Now, in the old days, we used to arm and disarm those spoilers in conjunction with the gear. So every time we moved the gear handle, we armed or disarmed the spoilers as appropriate. So after takeoff, you call positive climb, gear up, and the guy who was lifting the gear would lift the gear, turn the landing lights off on the ones that are attached to the nose gear, and then he'd disarm the spoilers. Now, a few Airbus operators did that poorly, and the pilot who was disarming them, instead of just pushing the lever down, pushed the lever down and then pulled the lever back a bit, deploying the spoilers, which at the point at which you're raising the gear very close to the ground, not an ideal action. So Airbus rewrote, and we then adopted new SOPs. So we now disarm those spoilers with the last flap retraction. So as we go up to clean the airplane up from flap 1 to flap 0, that's the point at which the spoilers are disarmed. So it was just a change to keep hands away from that lever when we were close to the ground. But otherwise, we're just very similar to what you do, mate.
Excellent. So hopefully that answers your question regarding the spoiler handle, the speed brake handle, whatever you call it, because they're used in different ways, and sometimes more of a speed brake kind of a fashion, and others in a spoiler type of fashion when you're taking off and landing. Moving on, Gregory Dubin sent us a photo, a very interesting photo. Are you seeing this, Captain Nick? This X-ray. It looks like, well, let's see what the doctor thinks about this situation.
These are, I think he sent these to me for official consultation on what this finding might be. And we've got 2 different X-rays, and I know the folks listening and in the chat room can't see this. Although if you follow us on Twitter or Facebook, I think it may have been in one of those places. But the first one is an X-ray of someone's skull, and the second one is a chest X-ray. And there appear to be some interesting foreign objects in each of these X-rays. And
it kind of looks like.
What do you think they look like? I mean,
it looks familiar. It's a shape, a silhouette of something that I don't know comes to mind. I just can't put my finger on it.
I mean,
I don't know. I was saying he must have a 747 stuck in his head, giving him a migraine, and he's got a nice Airbus in his heart because that's where the love comes from.
Wait a minute. What's the diagnosis then, Dr. Steph?
This is clear-cut signs of APG syndrome.
Doctor, give me the news. I got a bad case of
APG syndrome.
no pills gonna cure my heel. I got a bad case of
APG syndrome.
Because there's no cure, unfortunately. And this is a really advanced case, unfortunately. So
yes,
I don't know
I've never seen one
who
this
this
bad.
particular patient is, but it doesn't look
He said
good.
he went to the doctor and they diagnosed me with APG syndrome.
Yeah, that's actually a neat trick because not a lot of doctors know about that. Steph's one of the few.
No.
She's the world expert in that, and they
Leading
her
expert.
professor of APG
The
syndrome.
only expert.
Hey, did you see this?
What?
A retired Boeing 747-400 airframe on eBay. It used to be a Virgin Atlantic 747 named Lady Penelope. It's for sale. Buy it now on eBay for only $900,000 US.
Yeah, well, I think I should get 2, except I think there's only 1, and then I could ceremonially burn them at the next, burning.
Oh, come on! Virgin Atlantic. I mean, I don't know. That's a company that's very similar to the company that you fly for, of course.
Yeah, but not quite the same.
No,
Not quite the same. But no, it's rather nice that they're making a show out of getting rid of this old dinosaur. So I'm sure there are some people down there with sufficiently bad APG syndrome to club together and buy this. Then they can make themselves an APG clubhouse in it, stick it up a tree or something.
That's what he says to me all the time. Stick it up a tree, Jeff. This is from Stuart Thompson. He says, as many of the 747s in commercial service enter their final years of service, it's sad to see them now showing up in the desert boneyards of the U.S. broken and distressed. Fortunately, I still see them flying overhead here in Alberta as they head for San Francisco, Seattle, L.A. at the end of their trips, but probably not for too much longer. I came across this following article on eBay regarding this airplane for sale on eBay. But one thing that he was asking me, or maybe somebody else sent me something similar regarding this eBay 747-400 airframe. It does clearly state, it says the airframe. Guess what? If you see a picture of it, it doesn't have any engines.
Nope.
Well, those engines are worth money. They're probably still got a bit of life left in them, and they can probably strap them on a 777 or something. I don't know. But the airframe itself has obviously exceeded its life. It's no longer viable because eventually the wing boxes or the fuselage or some major component that is irreplaceable cannot be fixed. Eventually life's out and the aircraft just won't fly again because it would be madness to try and replace that. It would be more expensive to do that than it would be to get another airframe from somewhere else. So yeah, it's been retired and it's going to make someone a lovely little Wendy house in their garden.
I would imagine that if you could find Boeing 747-400 engines on eBay, they'd probably cost at least $5 million a piece, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, they'd look good in your truck, though, wouldn't they? I mean, you'd get one of those in. I don't know how much gas you carry, and the average flatbed truck, one of those strapped on the back, that'd look really neat.
Yes. All right. That reminds me of some feedback that somebody sent in regarding a used... and they were here. Let me see if I can find it because it looks like we've come to the end of our 221.
We got lots of links to this particular story. Was it the same one or was it something different?
No, it was regarding a place in, is it Ireland, where a guy is doing something that I've never heard of. It's like upscale camping, and he barged over a 767, I believe, over there to be part of this thing. So I'm trying to find that feedback. It was somewhere in the middle of this, I think. In the meantime, Captain Nick and Dr. Steph are going to entertain you while Captain Jeff looks for this.
Oh, well, you could just play Plain Tales.
Oh, this would be a perfect time for Plain Tales. Thank you. Except that I'm got to make sure that I find it.
So go ahead with that entertainment. You know what? I already did a little bit of entertaining. They got the tour of the backyard here while you guys disappeared and before the feed cut off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh.
I think they saw most of that. And
so you were on for a little while, and then
and then they were like, "You disappeared." I was like, "Oh, yep, no longer says live."
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Well, here we go. I found the Andy Anderson interview number 4. So let's take a listen.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. In this, the last of the current Andy Anderson interviews, he takes us up to the conclusion of his career flying the 747.
The company ordered Vickers VC-10s. Now, the Vickers VC-10 was the last of the Vickers airplanes that were produced. And it was the most sophisticated airplane. So we used to fly it just below the speed of sound. And they were perhaps in the days before everybody had to fly at the same speed, for instance, across the Atlantic.
if you were used to cruise pretty fast and pretty high, what happened if you lost an engine, say up there in the low 40s? Whereas nowadays we would drift down quite a long way. But on the VC-10, what happened?
Or if you wished, you could just push the other three up. No, that's quite an airplane when you can do that with them.
Excellent. There was one incident, I remember you mentioning, where you managed to set a runway on fire. Do you remember that?
Yes, that was a very, very strange thing that happened. And it was hushed up both by myself not saying anything and the people involved with the airfield not saying anything, because probably their runway was in pretty poor condition anyway. And the place was Santiago in Chile, and the name of the airfield was Los Rios. Now, Los Rios was the airfield that we were going into initially, while the Chileans were building their brand new airport some distance on the other side of the city. Putwell, it was called, and that new airfield had everything that you can possibly desire, including ILSs, etc. Whereas Los Rios, all it had was pretty poor runways and an old ADF system. So the reason for the fire was that the Dunlop rep joined the crew in the hotel, and we were talking about V2 climbs. I said, if you're out at the airfield in the morning, I'll show you a V2 climb. And he said, I'm only too willing to come out to the airport. So, as you all know, there are three commands that the first officer gives the captain on takeoff. The first one is V1, after which you may not stop. The second one is rotate, which allows the captain time to ease the stick back to get the aircraft into a flying attitude. And the next one is V2, where the aircraft is lifted off the ground and it's at minimum flying speed. So when the first officer called V2, the angle of climb was really quite steep, and the tail end of the aeroplane was pointing in 4 enormous conways down onto this broken up surface of the runway, and little reason why it should not catch fire. So we held the V2 attitude until we got to about 3,000 feet, and then we leveled off and turned downwind. And I glanced back at the airfield in time to see the smoke rising from the runway and the fire engine tearing out to try and put it out.
I love that. That is a great story. You moved from the VC-10 on to the 707. There's a lovely phrase you use to describe the 707. What kind of aircraft was it?
Well, after the enjoyment of flying the VC-10, the 707 was a different kettle of fish. We used to call it a very nice piece of agricultural equipment, which compared with the VC-10, we really thought it was. And the unfortunate thing about the demise of the VC-10 was the sudden rise of oil price, and this meant that the VC-10 became too expensive to operate. Now, the 707 was going to replace the VC-10A because it was equipped with fan jets and not straight-through jets. Therefore, it was much more economical, and also it had greater capacity. So therefore, it could bring the company back into profitability.
After a while, you ended up on the 747. That's quite a career move from someone who started off on DC-2s. But how did that work?
I joined Kuwait Airways when I was approaching retirement. I'd been with them for some months when they asked me would I become their fleet manager on the 707. So I said to them, there's little doubt that this company will re-equip with larger aircraft. And when they do, I would like to go on that airplane. Now, if you choose the 747, which you probably will, because the company has always flown Boeing, then I would accept a job as a 707 fleet manager, providing when the 747 came along, you would guarantee that I was chosen to do a conversion course onto that aeroplane. And the board of directors of Kuwait Airways agreed to that. So eventually I did end up in Seattle, doing the conversion onto the 747. And so I therefore felt that my career was just about complete by flying one of the smallest to the biggest available at that time.
Yeah, the 747 is undoubtedly one of the most popular aircraft ever built. What would you put that down to?
Well, I think it was the right airplane at the right time. It was the first of the large airplanes, and Boeing took a tremendous risk in producing it. I'm told that it got to the stage in Seattle where the company was so desperate and losing its workforce to such an extent that there was a big sign that you read on the way, on the side of the road as you went into Seattle, and it read, "Would the last person to leave please turn out the lights?" But it was a beautiful airplane, there's no doubt about it. And of course, as far as Kuwait was concerned, with so much money available, they had everything on the airplane that Boeing could possibly think of. So it made it, from our point of view, a really deluxe aircraft to fly.
Now, there was also never any concern for you in your last few years about fuel economy. I guess you never really had any worries.
We used to tanker fuel around, and we always, particularly out of Kuwait, we always had full tanks. Arriving over London one early morning, and the airfield was fog bound, and there were aircraft in holding patterns. So London obviously wanted to get people in the stack in the right position as far as their amount of fuel they had. So they called up each aircraft in turn and asked them what their endurance was. And when it came to my turn, I couldn't resist saying, this is Kuwaiti 543. Our endurance is most of the day.
Lovely. Now, if there's one piece of advice you would like to offer today's generation of pilots, what would it be?
We reached the stage, even in the 747 era, where we had to literally say to captains, you must do landings manually. Even back in the 80s, we could press a button and the inertial navigation would take us to London, and press another button and the ILS would put us on the descent path to the airfield, and then we'd click into auto land, and that would be it. And pilots were becoming so, what would you call it, lack of experience in manhandling aeroplanes, that when we came up for 6 monthly checks, we'd find that some of the pilots hadn't even done the required 11 landings and takeoffs for the license renewal. So we insisted that they did manual landings. Now, aircraft have become more sophisticated, and more responsibility has been taken from the pilot's hands, to the extent now where pilots literally are flying the aeroplane by pushing buttons. And I really think that an effort should be made to insist that these people do handle the aeroplane and not allow the electronics to take them over.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that, and it's been a most interesting talk. And I appreciate you giving us your time.
Well, it's been a great pleasure. Who doesn't mind talking about themselves?
Well, I expect we'll hear more from Andy Anderson in the future at some point. But that's it for the moment. Next week, on to something completely different.
And indeed, who doesn't mind talking about themselves, right?
Well, that's why we do the podcast, isn't it?
Exactly.
I love the fact that Andy had identified back in the 1980s, that guys were already falling foul of automation. So this is in the early days of the 747. And of course, now the problem is even worse. So it's interesting that it's taken, in the 80s through to now 35 years or more for at last this problem to be addressed properly. I understand the FAA putting more advice out to try and encourage companies to allow their pilots, or ensure their pilots have sufficient hand flying skills by doing more practice.
Yes, it's been a problem for quite some time, and it's not getting any better. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to reverse that bad trend. Looks like I was going to play a piece of feedback that was craft made for Dr. Steph because it deals with a medical issue and heart surgery and being able to become a pilot. However, looks like Dr. Steph had a call from work and then her computer died. So she's no longer with us. So, sorry, Steph. And she had an event planned for today anyway, so I would imagine we're probably not going to see her back again. So let's just do one more piece of feedback, because I know that Captain Nick has to get ready for his sign-in later today for his trip back to Heathrow. And several people sent in links to this story. It involves a 767 airframe and something called glamping. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, it's a kind of a modern thing. Last few years, those really muddy open air festivals, pop festivals, etc., where the those who can afford it and don't want to paddle around in the soggy fields rent a very beautifully appointed tent where everything's sorted out. So a lot of celebrities and a lot of people with money will fly in a helicopter and stay in a fantastic tent. But this looks like something completely different.
Yeah, Undertaker David McGowan has a transport themed glamping village. And when I saw these articles about glamping, I'd never heard of that, which is a portmanteau of glamorous and camping. So that's how they came up with this term glamping. And looks like he wanted to add something interesting to his glamping village. A disused Boeing 767 has finally reached its new home in Enniskron, Sligo. I don't know how you pronounce any of those words. They're Irish. After a mammoth effort that lasted until the early hours, the plane, which was making its way from the Shannon Airport via a barge, was brought ashore last night. Of course, this was back some time ago that this was sent in, a few weeks back. And it has some photos in the article of the 767 sans wings on a barge. I would imagine that the wings are going to somehow follow, or maybe not. Maybe they don't need the darn wings for this glamping village because they're just using the cabin of the aircraft for the makeshift hotel, I guess.
Yeah, that's Enniscrone in County Sligo. So
Of course,
yeah. And
that's what I meant to say.
I suppose you only need the fuselage. People aren't going to sleep inside the wings unless they've got a very strange fuel fetish. But no, that sounds like it's not the first bloke, I think, to turn an aircraft fuselage into a hotel. But I guess it'll add a bit of an extra colour to the event. If anyone wants to sleep in an airplane, you can actually do it while one's flying. I think would be more fun.
Excellent. You know, we've had so many technical glitches. If you're listening to the audio podcast, you have no idea, unless you're looking at the show notes and you go down and you click on the YouTube video, which right now we're on our second YouTube video for today because of the technical problems. And I'm going to try to put those two together, or I might just have two links there in the show notes for you to watch if you want to punish yourself. You can see all the problems we were having today. But I'm not really sure exactly how long the show is at this point because we've had so many starts and stops. But it might be time to end the show very soon. You know what? I'm looking here. Looks like Fabian sent us some feedback. And no, I'm going to save that one because that's one that I wanted to play when Rick was back with us. So, you know what? This might be a short episode. And that's sometimes a good thing. So I'm thinking about ending this now. And then hopefully we'll be back to normal operations next time we record one of these.
Yeah, well, it hasn't been a short episode from where we're sitting, Jeff. It's taken the entire morning and crept into the afternoon, but it's been a pleasure anyway. I've had a giggle watching you fight with your computer and various microphone combinations. We've been through 3 different combinations of mics today, and actually, as we finish, it's sounding as clear as crystal. I don't know what it's coming out like, but I think you might have eventually cured it.
Yeah, maybe you just got to keep with it for several hours before it finally sorts itself out. But whatever, we still enjoyed presenting this to you. More entertainment than information today. And we hope that you enjoyed it nonetheless. And if you want to learn more about the show, about the APG crew, etc., you can head over to airlinepilotguy.com. There you'll find that information, schedule information, how you can subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, watch the YouTube channel, etc. Also, if you and information about how you can download the apps, the free APG app on both the iOS platform, the Apple App Store, and also the bless you, Android store. You can, or the Google Play Store actually, where you can download the free version of the APG app, and we have pro versions of the apps as well. If you don't want to deal with the ads, you can very reasonably priced pro versions that helps with the development of the app and helps Paul Whittle, our app guy, to offset the high costs of doing these apps. And we really do appreciate it, Paul. Thank you again for volunteering your time and your treasure to provide these wonderful apps to the APG community. And there you'll find the same kind of functionality that you would find on the website, where you can learn about our schedules and listen to the podcast, watch the YouTube videos, and interact with the APG community.
Most certainly. And just a little plug for Aircrew interviews. The interview that I was subject to sounds a little bit like another.
Were they torturing you?
Another appointment with the proctologist. No, it wasn't that bad at all. Aircrewinterview.tv. You'll find them on the website. And Mike Young has produced that video. Now, I hate to be a self-promoter, but I was delighted with the efforts that Mike did. So it's all down to his fantastic editing, nothing to do with me at all. And it was a pleasure to take part, Mike. So if any of you are interested, www.aircrewinterview.tv, you'll find it there. And other than that, we'll keep an eye on Twitter during the week. I'm not flying again for quite a while now. I think I've got a couple of weeks off. I'll be doing all my favorite hobbies, and I'll hopefully be available to catch up with you on the next show, Jeff. So look forward to seeing you then.
Look forward to seeing you as well. And to everyone listening, thanks so much for supporting the community, supporting the show. You are appreciated. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care. God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Ah!
Well done, Chat Rubus. I can't believe you stuck with us that long. That's fantastic. Oh, God, what a nightmare.
You know, it's probably a total of about a half an hour worth of actual recorded material.
Mike reckoned about 2 hours, he said.
Oh, my gosh. Well, you know, it's my fault for trying to come up with a solution that has been working actually pretty well until today. Where, you know, I can do most of the mixing on the MacBook Pro itself and save myself from having to haul around a mixer and all the cables. You know, just the weight is pretty excessive. But you know what? I'm going to go back to doing that. I think that sometimes you just got to go back to the old school and do the stuff that you know works for sure. And analog mixers and all that kind of stuff might be just the way to go. So again, thanks everyone out there for hanging with us, and thank you, Nick, for letting me destroy your hotel room here and turning it into a studio.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get my phone to work again. I'm going to have to get someone to come up with a cleft stick and bang on the door when it's call time.
So do you use the telephone system to kind of alert you and call you for your sign-in times and that kind of thing, your wake-up times?
Oh yeah, we're very sensitive about that. So we should be resting up to call time, and I will take some rest later on. And the idea is that if the flight is delayed, they won't call you, so you can continue asleep until the phone rings, and then you get up and go to work.
Who calls you?
Well, the hotel does, but they're advised by ops. So it's the local ops set up here at Atlanta will arrange the call time. The hotel are responsible for waking you. But the idea is that you don't get up automatically at your expected call time in case you should be taking more rest because the flight's delayed.
You know, we don't have that system at Acme. We're on our own. And if we want to have the hotel call us for like a wake-up call, it's something that we set up either on our sign-in sheet or we actually call after the fact and say, would you please call at 3 p.m. for a wake-up call? And half the time, probably more than that, but it seems, probably less than that. It seems like a large chunk of time, the call doesn't come when you asked it to, doesn't come at all, whatever. And I just, several years ago, I stopped getting wake-up calls from the hotel, and I just rely on my cell phone and other battery-operated devices to wake me up at their appropriate time. But our company doesn't, do that at all. They have nothing to do with it.
Really, even for your long haul, guys,
I don't know. I'm not sure about the long haul.
We're so time dependent. So if some of our flights, we're right butting up against our maximum duty period. So if we wake too early and effectively start our duty clock, then we could run out before we get into Heathrow. So and in theory, when we get to the aircraft, if I'm looking at my watch and saying, well, I haven't got enough duty time to even take off, that's a bit of a nightmare. So no, we rely on the company to wake us for that very reason.
I like that. That's cool. Yeah, the pops and clicks from the mic are still happening even now. Wow. What we're hearing is not clicking or popping or anything. So that's good for at least the audio recording. Not good if you're watching and listening to us on the video. We just got a message from Steph. Are you guys still going? Yes. I guess she's finished with her call. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna shut it down because it's gonna take some time for us to get this room back in shape and for Nick to get ready for his trip and maybe take a nap or something before he heads to the airport. So thanks everyone for being with us this morning or this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you again soon.
Yeah, great fun. Again, Jeff. And it's so nice to do this together. It makes a big difference to me. And it's because you can interact so much quicker and than you can when you're waiting for internet lag to trying to let you butt in. So it's nice to be able to do a show.
Ow! Oh, that's the last time we're doing this. He's hitting me. Okay. Well, that's it. We're going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. See everybody.
Yeah, bye, everybody.